It is the first Wednesday of 2025, my dudes, which means 1, Happy New Year, and 2, it's time for the first thoughts and initial impressions of 2025. This one will be on new kid Adin, the newest Moonlight 4-star that was just shown this morning earlier over on YouTube. As with all of my first thoughts and initial impressions videos, I'll give you my 2 cents on the character. Do I think she's good? Where do I think she'll be played? What kinds of equipment sets and artifacts would I play her on? All that stuff you've come to expect in a first thoughts and initial impressions video. Anyways, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump in now and watch new kid Adin's S3 animation.
I'm getting pumped! Please share your wisdom. Since I let you have one, time to return the favor! All this tension, I love it!
I actually kind of like this S3 animation. It doesn't blow me out of the water like some of the other ones that we've had in the previous year, but it's a fine animation that really kind of portrays the kendo style of martial art that new kid Adin uses. I've seen people say online that it looks like it's a buff. I don't really feel that way. Overall, I think it's a solid start for the year in terms of animation, at least for a 4-star. As for voiceover trivia, in the English dub of Epic 7, new kid Adin is once again voiced by Rochelle Hager. You may know her as Saline from the Fire Emblem franchise or Zwei from Goddess of Victory, Nike. As one final aside before moving on to the character's stats, what the heck is going on with the voice direction currently in the game? When the original version of this character came out, we referred to her as Adin. Since then, it's been corrected to be Adin, which is how most of the player base has been referring to her for the last 2 to 2.5 years. Now, it is apparently Adin.
Nice to meet you. I'm Adin, transferring from Natsu High.
Anyways, new kid Adin is a 4-star dark thief of the Sagittarius zodiac symbol. Her stat line is unique to her. Taking a closer look at her stat line, she has 1,068 attack, 515 defense, 4,733 health, 119 speed, 27% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, and no starting effectives or effect resistance. This translates obviously to very high speed and very high starting critical hit chance. But the attack is also pretty good on this stat line. Normally, 1,068 attack would be very, very low for a character, but when you compare some of the hardest hitting characters that are 4-stars and thieves like Sid or Last Piece Corinne, she ranks right in line with those characters, so expect the character to have pretty ridiculous multipliers to compensate. As for her imprint, she has health percentage for the top and front side of the team and attack percentage for herself. Honestly, the imprints are fine. I'm more concerned about the acquisition of the imprints. This is a character previously that was a 3-star. You are making a 4-star ML version of it that could only be imprinted with itself. Considering how hard it is to pull a specific ML 4-star, since there are so many in the pool now, I expect many players that are not big spenders on Epic 7, it will take you over a year to actually get this character to triple S imprint, whereas most other ML 4-stars that come out, you could probably do it within a matter of days. Anyways, you know the drill. Let's go over the kit so that way we're all on the same page. Starting with Adin's skill 2 passive, you started this. Increases the evasion of Adin by 35 to 50% depending on Malagora, and when successfully evading, grants vigor to Adin for 1 turn. At the end of someone's turn, when Adin is granted vigor, increases the combat readiness of the caster by 10%. Moving on to the skill 3, it's Scattering Petals, Falling Leaves. You acquire 3 souls upon use, and it has a 4 to 5 turn cooldown depending on Malagora. After increasing the attack of Adin for 3 turns, attacks the enemy with exceptional technique, inflicting injuries. The severity of the injuries increases proportional to damage dealt. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 30% every time this skill is used. When the caster is granted vigor, a successful attack deals additional damage equivalent to 100% of injuries inflicted on the target. Soulburn effect for the cost of 10 souls. Skill cooldown is decreased by 2 turns. And finally, Adin's basic attack skill and opening attacks the enemy with a bamboo sword, inflicting injuries. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 10% every time this skill is used. When used on Adin's turn, if Adin is granted vigor, attacks all enemies. The changed attack does not trigger a dual attack. Now that you know the kit, let's talk about the character. New kid Adin is almost assuredly going to fall into one of 2 camps in my opinion. Solid, but not a broken damage dealer in the upcoming meta, or completely worthless. At surface glance, new kid Adin is Savior Adin with built-in injuries, making her amazing versus all of the insanely strong knights and bruisers that currently dominate the top tiers. Characters like Empyrean Ilanav, Mort, etc. Her skill 3 is almost a carbon copy of Savior Adin's Smite of Salvation, but instead of bonus damage to light units, you get essentially the pop damage from Urban Shadow Shoes, Operation Cream Pastry. Sadly, this move doesn't come with the team-wide invincibility that gave the original a ton of utility. Her basic skill also is, in my opinion, worse than the original Savior Adin's. Unbuffable with built-in lifesteal was incredible on a character with built-in dodge, as it allowed you to forego the lifesteal set in favor of massive damage. Injury does have its own place, and I'd rather have a character have built-in injury than have to wear the injury set, such as with characters like Alencia or Empyrean Ilanav, but it's just not as good, in my opinion, as the built-in lifesteal in order to save the character. I think the lifesteal set is going to be really strong as a starting point for this character as a result, especially when we talk about how the enhanced basic attack is an AoE injury move. AoE injury has historically always been better than single target injury, even if single target damage at first glance appears to have the better injury rate. The only problem I have with the enhanced basic attack is that if you have Vigor, you can't not trigger the AoE damage attack, which leaves you incredibly prone to getting hit with all manner of counter attacks, accidentally triggering passives like Dragon Bride Senya or Janua, and of course, even more stuff than just that. Perhaps the best part of this character's kit, though, is the passive skill. You started this. Getting Vigor off of every dodge is massive, making Moonlight Dreamblade a really powerful budget option on this character. Getting effectively 30% defense and 80% attack increase off a single dodge means this character is probably going to hit like a truck. As we talked about earlier, characters like Green Sid and Last Piece Corinne have similar or worse attack stats than new kid Adin, and those characters can usually one-shot a lot of the cast, so if Adin's multipliers are similar in terms of stopping power, this character might actually do ludicrous single target DPS. And this is before we talk about the fact that she gets 10% combat radius at the end of every turn if she has Vigor, making her a blazing fast character on top of already having a very high 119 base speed. Anyways, now that I've got the positive out of the way, let's talk about the negatives for the character. For starters, this character gets absolutely bodied by Archdemon Shadow and New Moon Luna, two characters that will see heavy amounts of play in PvP. Archdemon Shadow in particular is going to basically force you to have to build the immunity set. When these two characters that show up every single match at all levels of play, are going to be your bad matchups, that's not a good sign for your viability at top level play. On top of that, she's still a dodge character, which means she's made of glass, and, well, those dodge characters also have pronounced hard counters. You could also just get really unlucky and just die in one hit at the start of a match. Adin also has what I like to call the Specimen Says problem. If you try to hit Savior Adin and she dodges, this results in an AoE counter that could get someone on your team killed, and at the best case scenario, you lose a bunch of souls. If you hit Remnant Violet and he dodges, there's a chance that someone on your team is going to take a massacre to the face and probably die. If you hit Specimen Says and he dodges, well, he gets attack buff from like Moonlight Dreamblade. Essentially, you could throw everything at new kid Adin, and the worst thing that could happen to you is maybe she combat readiness pushes up, cuts in front of someone on your team, and blows somebody out with her S3. But based on the tuning of the fight, good players will know when it's go time and just pile onto her without any fear of retaliation. She's still a thief with barely better defense than Green Celine and far worse HP than Celine at the end of the day. I think where the character really shines, though, might be versus Harsetti teams. The character has built-in combat radius, which lets her thrive and get a lot of extra turns underneath of Harsetti, and she has high enough base speed to not be hindered once Harsetti is off the board. Everything Harsetti does triggers Vigor in Adin's kit, and injury is obviously good versus the types of team compositions, that Harsetti facilitates, things that are full of knights and bruisers. As for how I'd build her, I think very slow, big bulk, big damage on lifesteal with Moonlight Dreamblade or Double-Edged Decrescent is the build that really speaks to me on this character. This is essentially how people are building Remnant Violet right now to fight with or against Harsetti. Speed set to take advantage of her massive 119 base speed and good turn cycling also seems like a pretty good idea, just simply out-tempo your opponent. If her damage multipliers are solid, Destruction set, as always, is mathematically the best option for her, so if you just want big damage at mid speeds, this is probably the go-to. As for the injury set, I know people will probably feel like it's a good idea, but to me, I see it as a win more option that I'm not super interested in trying out since I would want to cover the glaring weaknesses that are in the character's kit, especially when she's this fragile. Anyways, those are my thoughts on New Kid Adin. Certainly looks like a good character, but definitely not the best of the best, right? I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a character that completely sets the world on fire. She's definitely not Bloodblade Corinne, that's for sure, at least in my opinion. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. If you agree or disagree with anything I said in the video, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I hope you have a fantastic start to your 2025. Later now.